Have you ever felt like you're screaming into a void, watching everyone else succeed while you're stuck spinning your wheels with empty pockets? Imagine standing in a crowded room where money talks, but when you open your mouth, silence. Not because you have nothing to say, but because the world has already decided that broke means irrelevant. Here's what keeps most people trapped in that room forever. They think invisibility is their enemy. They believe being unseen is the problem. But what if I told you that being invisible when you re-broke is actually the most dangerous advantage you could ever have? Think about it. When you have nothing, absolutely nothing, no one is watching your moves. No one expects you to rise. No one's studying your strategy because they've already written you off. While the comfortable ones are busy maintaining their image, defending their reputation, and living under the microscope of expectation, you're free. Free to fail without an audience. Free to experiment without judgment. Free to learn without the pressure of proving anything to anyone. This is the paradox that Machiavelli understood 5 centuries ago, and it's the same paradox that builds empires today. The most powerful position is often the one that looks the weakest. But let me ask you something deeper. Have you ever noticed how desperation has a smell? Not literally, but psychologically. When you're broke and you walk into a room needing something, people can sense it. It's in your eyes, your posture, the way you speak too fast or laugh too hard at jokes that aren't funny. Desperation broadcasts weakness, and weakness repels the very opportunities you're chasing. So here is the question that separates those who escape poverty from those who marinate in it. How do you appear powerful when you have nothing? How do you project control when you're barely controlling your next meal? The answer isn't what you think. It's not about faking wealth or pretending to be something you're not. It's about understanding a truth that most people discover too late. Money doesn't start with money. It starts with the control of 3 invisible assets: your emotions, your time, and your perception. Master those 3, and money becomes inevitable. Ignore them, and you'll work yourself into the grave chasing dollars that slip through your fingers like water. Let's talk about emotions first, because this is where most broke people destroy themselves. When you have no money, every setback feels personal. Every rejection feels like proof that you're not good enough. Every day that passes without progress feels like wasted life. Your emotions become this chaotic storm that dictates your decisions. You react instead of respond. You panic instead of plan. You quit because the pain of trying feels worse than the numbness of giving up. But here's what Machiavelli would tell you. The moment you let your emotions control you, you've already lost. Fortune doesn't favor the passionate. It favors the calculated. Now imagine someone else in your exact situation. Same empty bank account, same lack of connections, same starting point. But this person has something you don't: emotional discipline. When opportunities reject them, they don't internalize it. They study what went wrong. When progress feels slow, they don't complain. They adjust their strategy. When people doubt them, they don't argue. They simply continue building in silence. Who do you think wins? The one with talent or the one with control? Every single time, control wins. Because talent without discipline is just potential energy that never converts into results. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people think time is just something that passes while they figure things out. They treat it like it's neutral, like everyone gets the same 24 hours, and what matters is how motivated you are. That's a lie that keeps people poor. Time isn't neutral. It's either your greatest asset or your biggest liability, depending on how you deploy it. When you're broke, you actually have more time than the wealthy because you're not maintaining complex systems, managing teams, or juggling investments. You have pure, raw, unobligated time. The question is, are you treating it like the weapon it is? Think about this scenario. 2 people start with nothing. Person A spends their time consuming, scrolling through social media, watching others succeed, complaining about how unfair everything is, seeking validation from people who can't help them. Person B spends their time observing patterns, learning skills that compound, mapping the invisible hierarchies in their industry, quietly testing small experiments without announcing them. 3 years pass. Person A is still broke, still bitter, still convinced the system is rigged. Person B has built something. Maybe it's not massive yet, but it exists. It generates value. It has momentum. What changed? Not their circumstances, their deployment of time. And this brings us to the third invisible asset, perception. This is the one that most people completely misunderstand. So pay attention, because this might be the most important thing you hear today. Perception isn't about lying or manipulating people. It's about understanding that humans make decisions based on appearances before they verify reality. People give money to those who look like they don't need it. They trust people who appear calm under pressure. They respect those who speak less, but with precision. Your job when you're broke isn't to convince people you're rich. It's to convince them you're capable, reliable, and unshaken by circumstance. But how do you do that when your reality is chaos? When you're one missed payment away from disaster? When you don't know where next month's rent is coming from? Here's the Machiavellian truth. You separate your internal reality from your external projection. Internally, you can be terrified, uncertain, scrambling. Externally, you must appear composed, deliberate, strategic. Not fake, not arrogant, just steady. Because steadiness in chaos is the ultimate signal of competence. And competence is what attracts opportunity before you ever prove you deserve it. Now let's talk about what nobody wants to admit when they're starting from zero. You're going to want to quit. Not once, not twice, multiple times. There will be weeks where nothing works, or every door slams in your face, where people you thought would help you suddenly go silent, where your own mind becomes your worst enemy, whispering that maybe you're just not cut out for this. And in those moments, you'll face the real test. Not whether you have talent or luck or connections, but whether you can keep moving when everything inside you screams to stop. Machiavelli wrote about fortune as if it were a river. Sometimes it flows in your favor, carrying you effortlessly forward. Sometimes it floods, threatening to drown you. But he also wrote that fortune is only master of half our actions. The other half belongs to us. What he meant was this: you can't control what happens to you, but you can absolutely control what you build while you're waiting for conditions to improve. The broke person who understands this becomes dangerous because they're not sitting around hoping things get better. They're constructing systems that make better inevitable. What does that actually look like? It means every single day, you're asking yourself, what did I build today that can pay me tomorrow? Not literally tomorrow, but eventually, repeatedly, without me having to rebuild it. This is how you escape the trap of trading time for money. Because as long as your income requires your constant presence, you're not building wealth. You're just building a more comfortable prison. Real wealth comes from creating assets, things that generate value, whether you're working or sleeping, whether you're healthy or sick, whether you're motivated or burned out. But here's the part that breaks most people. Building assets requires patience in a world that rewards instant gratification. It requires working in silence while everyone around you is celebrating their highlight reels. It requires believing in delayed results when your bank account is screaming for immediate solutions. And this is precisely why most people never make it. Not because they're not smart enough or hardworking enough, but because they can't stomach the gap between action and reward. They need proof too soon. They need validation too often. They need reassurance that what they're doing matters before it actually pays off. Machiavelli would tell you that the need for constant validation is what separates the powerful from the powerless. A powerful move based on strategy, not applause. They make decisions that might take months or years to prove correct because they're not playing for today as approval. They're positioning for tomorrow's dominance. When you're broke, this is your edge. You have nothing to maintain, no image to protect, no reputation to defend. You can make bold moves without anyone caring enough to criticize them. You can fail spectacularly, and nobody notices because you are already invisible. Use that invisibility intentionally. Study people who are 3 steps ahead of where you are. Not the billionaires so far removed their advice doesn't apply, but the ones who recently climbed out of your exact situation. Watch how they price their services. Notice how they handle rejection. Pay attention to what they say no to as much as what they say yes to. Then find their weaknesses, because everyone who succeeds has blind spots, things they overlook or consider beneath them. Those overlooked spaces are where you insert yourself, not by competing directly, but by flanking, by dominating the small, boring tasks they've outgrown, but that still need doing. Money doesn't grow in glamorous places. It grows in the margins, in the details nobody wants to handle, in the problems people would rather ignore than solve. If you can master what others dismiss, you become indispensable. And indispensability always converts into income eventually. But you have to be willing to do the unglamorous work long enough for people to realize they need you. That's the silence phase, the part where you're building, but nobody's watching, where you're improving, but nobody's applauding. Most people break here. They confuse silence with failure, when actually silence is where all compounding happens. Think about seeds planted underground. For weeks, nothing visible occurs. To the impatient observer, nothing is happening. But beneath the surface, roots are spreading, systems are forming, strength is accumulating. Then, one day, breakthrough. Not because something magical happened that day, but because everything that happened in the dark finally manifested in the light. Your invisible phase works exactly the same way. Every skill you develop in secret, every system you build without announcement, every discipline you practice when nobody's checking, it's all root structure. And when you finally break through, everyone will call it overnight success because they weren't watching you dig in the dark. But let's address the elephant in the room. What about people who tell you to stay realistic? Who warn you not to get your hopes up? Who remind you that most people fail? Machiavelli would smile at that because he understood something crucial. The masses never lead. They follow. They react. They wait for proof before they believe. If you move with the crowd, you arrive too late. The money has already been made. The opportunity has already closed. Your job isn't to convince the skeptics. It is to position yourself ahead of the realization they'll have 3 years from now when they finally understand what you saw today. This requires a specific kind of thinking. Not optimistic, not pessimistic, strategic. You're not betting on hope. You're betting on patterns. You're noticing what people consistently overpay for, what they emotionally attach to despite logic, where inefficiencies create gaps. Money hides in those gaps. Find the gap between what people want and what they're currently getting. Position yourself there. That's not manipulation. That's market intelligence. That's seeing what exists, but remains invisible to those too comfortable to look closely. And finally, understand this. You cannot build wealth without first building the capacity to hold it. That capacity develops now, while you have nothing. The way you treat small amounts of money predicts how you'll treat large amounts. The discipline you practice in scarcity determines your behavior in abundance. If you waste time now, you'll waste capital later. If you leak energy now, you'll leak profit later. Machiavelli's entire philosophy was about control, specifically self-control, because no external power matters if you can't govern yourself. So when you're broke and invisible, don't curse it. Use it. Study while they celebrate. Build while they broadcast. Plan while they panic. Because one day, when you finally rise, they won't remember the years you spent underground. They'll see the breakthrough and call it luck. But you'll know the truth. Every invisible day was training. Every moment of scarcity was refinement. And by the time the world finally sees you, you won't just have money. You'll have something far more valuable, mastery over yourself. And that kind of wealth, nobody can ever take away.